The sheer numbers of people coming in have placed massive pressure on public services like housing, access to GPs and doctors.
Now just take a step back. Have you noticed in the last couple of years, it's got a bit busy around about? Whether it's on the roads, on the trains. What about trying to rent or buy a home? Have you found that? Have you found rents going up? A little bit harder to see a doctor? And if you have to go to hospital, A&E, does that feel a bit busier to you? Trying to get a dentist appointment? Any of this stuff. It relates to the size of the population. Well, look out the data on the net migration number into the United Kingdom, people coming to settle here in 2023. Gross number is a city the size of Birmingham, about 1.3, 1.35 million people. What we don't know is how many people, in theory, it's a bit of a rough estimate, have left. My hunch is the net number is going to be about the same as 2022, somewhere between 700 and 800,000 people.
The arguments around the social and cultural impact of mass migration are well rehearsed, as is the democratic one. We have all been voting for 30 years for governments promising to control and reduce migration that only went on to do the opposite. But the last myth to be debunked was that mass migration was an unalloyed good for the economy. In fact, it's had a lot of damaging consequences on productivity, which has flatlined in recent years, on wages, which have been undercut by foreign labour, on the housing market. The sheer numbers of people coming in have placed massive pressure on public services like housing, access to GPs and doctors. That costs money to the exchequer, and also the types of people that have been coming in, low wage, low skilled individuals who do not make a net contribution to the taxpayers here in the UK.
We've actually deliberately opened the doors to mass immigration, relatively low skilled, low cost labour. Yes, big business might be thrilled to have that extra supply to keep wages down. But that's why everybody's feeling a bit poorer, because not only have our taxes been going up, but wages have been relatively stagnant, because of course you've got this vast influx of labour, some of whom want to work, but actually some of whom are just happy to be a burden on our benefit system.
There's a real problem with the levels of migration that we are carrying at the moment. One, there's no mandate for it, and we're doing categorically what the British people do not want. Secondly, it's imposing undue burden on our public services, whether it's the NHS, whether it's school places, or whether it's on housing supply. Thirdly, it depresses wages. We know that more people coming into this country are taking jobs at lower levels, at lower wages, and really what we need employers to do is raise wages so we create that high-skilled, high-wage economy. And lastly, I think the pace of migration is causing real damage to community cohesion and the social fabric of our country, because people are coming from countries where their culture is sometimes at odds with British values and British culture. And I think we are seeing that play out in a very worrying way on our streets, but this is only going to get worse in years to come. We have a real problem with controlling our borders. We are not in control of our southern border. That is undermining our public safety, it's undermining our border control, it's undermining our national security as well. The simple answer is we've not been able to control our borders because of an elastic and disproportionate interpretation of human rights laws. It's now time to leave the European Convention on Human Rights.
You have to repeal the Human Rights Act. You will never, ever, ever deal with this problem, all right? So you have to repeal, and you probably have to say to yourself, do you know what? We don't need European-style human rights. We've been since Magna Carta, freest country in the world. Yeah. And we should be rather proud of the fact that we as a country have always given the much greater protection against an overbearing state. So until you deal with that, you'll never solve this. Once you've dealt with that, it starts to become quite easy. You do what Tony Abbott did in Australia. You say, right, nobody that comes via this route will ever be granted refugee status.
Our policy includes rigorous offshore processing, including third country processing. Our policy involves turning around boats where this can safely and practically be done, to talk about further improvements to our policy to ensure that a coalition government will do what it takes, whatever it takes, to keep our borders secure and our country safe. There will be a presumption where boat people destroy their identity documents that they will be denied refugee status.
And then you literally start sending people back. And of course, Brussels will scream and the United Nations will scream. And you know what? Within a fortnight, no one will come. Today's immigration figures, stunning figures. I mean, 1.2 million people settled in this country last year. 141,000 from Nigeria, 250,000 from India, 3,000 from Pakistan. I mean, this is incredible. This is incredible.
The fault of this problem we've got at the moment, the migrant crisis, is that we've got a weak government that's not prepared to do the right thing. And the right thing is turnbacks in the English Channel. We know that works. Other countries have done it. It's succeeded in the past. And to be really brave, when these illegal migrants, they are illegal migrants, not genuine asylum seekers, once they get to this country, stick them on a boat and send them straight back to France. It needs political will. It needs a courageous government to do this. These people are breaking into our country. People rushing these dinghies on the French beaches, jumping on and creating mayhem, people, being thrown into the sea, little children dying. It's disgusting. And actually, Parliament, where I work, has got blood on its hands. This should be stopped.
We've seen what happened when Europe opened their doors to jihad. Look at Paris. Look at London. They're no longer recognizable. And I'm going to get myself into a lot of trouble with the folks in Paris and the folks in London. But you know what? That's the fact. They are no longer recognizable, and we can't let that happen to our country. We have incredible culture, tradition. Nothing wrong with their culture, their tradition. We can't let that happen here, and I'll never let it happen to the United States of America.
Rishi Sunak has been leading us for about 18 months. He's been making these decisions. These are the consequences of those decisions, and therefore he needs to fix it. He needs to actually lower taxes in a way that people will feel, not tweaking around the edges. If he's serious about migration, he needs to put a cap on legal migration. He needs to take us out of the European Convention on Human Rights. That's how you actually send the message that he's serious about stopping the boats.
Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future. Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July. This election will take place at a time when the world is more dangerous than it has been since the end of the Cold War. Putin's Russia is waging a brutal war in Ukraine and will not stop there if he succeeds. That war has also made it all too clear the risk to our energy security. In the Middle East, the forces of Islamist extremism threaten regional and ultimately global stability. These tensions are exploited by extremists who seek to undermine our values and divide our society. Here at home, China is looking to dominate the 21st century by stealing a lead in technology, and migration is being weaponized by hostile states to threaten the integrity of our borders. And these uncertain times call for a clear plan and bold action to chart a course to a secure future. You must choose in this election who has that plan.
The country is in dire straits. Biggest debt level since World War II, highest taxation since World War II, GDP flatlining, GDP per capita reducing. I think we've had the longest recession, GDP per capita, in all of recorded history. Immigration through the roof. More people have come to this country in the last 25 years than in all of history before that. An inability to enforce our borders, and I could go on and on and on. Why it was that Rishi accelerated the decision to call an election. It was a very sensible move of mediocre economic news, and he thought he'd just run for it because inflation came down. But inflation only came down because of the reduction in the cap on gas and fuel prices. And he knows inflation in all probability is going to go on up. He also knows that there's no fiscal room for a tax cut before the general election. So he would have had to wait months with nothing good to show for it. And by the way, no flights going to Rwanda, and I can completely endorse anyone who's sensible enough to see that the Rwandan scheme is fundamentally flawed. No flights will go to Rwanda. We'll continue to have open borders. This administration that has so failed was always going to fail.
If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to spread more awareness. Share your thoughts in the comments below and join the conversation. Your engagement helps us bring more content to light. Remember, stay informed, stay engaged.